As we are going through our morning routine of doing morning walks, just picking up different things that sparks my daughter's interest, one of the things that I can't help thinking about is how she sees the world around her and how learning keeps taking place even though it is not within the conventional way of us thinking of what learning should be. So many of us define learning as a way of looking through books, sitting down in a classroom, getting taught by an expert or teacher. And I often surprise myself that I'm actually being schooled by my own 6-year-old. The things that she has taught me to see on the outside, the things that she innately wants to learn, and the constant questions and curiosities that keep coming through her mind has seriously fascinated me. I can't help but think about how much of life and learning actually happens outside of the normal way of doing things, whether it's for me or my kids. We are often taught that there is one path and one way to learn or one way to succeed. Growing up, everyone else around me was going through the same routine. From going to school, making friends, taking exams, tests, graduating, getting a job, getting married, and having kids. This was almost a pathway that so many of us would go through. Even though we have got different highs and lows, there's always a rhythm and routine that comes with these stages of life. Until I decided to take the path 2 years ago to quit my stable job in a hospital and work full-time as an artist. Now, this decision did not come overnight. It was a build-up from just being with my child, observing her, watching her curiosities, and really learning from what she's seeing around her. Somehow, being a mom has given me the courage to go beyond what I've always been used to. Yes, there is a pathway that everyone seems to take and go through. When I first started doing watercolor and teaching online, creating my painting videos, I had so many questions from people asking me when was I going to get a real job? Was this really something that I was planning to do? Is it just a hobby? And this is also because this isn't the typical pathway that many people are taking. That said, I am so grateful that you are spending time with me here. And if you're still listening in to me chatter, I would love to invite you to watch me paint this bouquet that I will be putting in my sketchbook. Maybe take a moment to pause this video, go grab your art supplies, sit down, get a cozy cup of tea, and listen to me chat as we sit down and paint together. Now, this painting was inspired by the walk that I went with my daughter, the beautiful blooms, plus the ability to just find some time for myself, even while I have my daughter with me every day. I want to also prioritize my own needs for creative expansion. The fact that you're watching me paint has really given me the courage to continue, and I also appreciate that you being here allows me to pursue my passions while still being given the opportunity to watch my kids grow every day. Now, I didn't go to art school. I didn't have some teacher walk me through step by step. I taught myself how to paint. And to be honest, there were so many moments where I doubted myself and wondering if I would ever get things right. And I have learned that it's okay to not get everything right the first time or the 10th time. And sometimes this is going to take years. And this is also what I love about taking the route of homeschooling, that my child doesn't have to learn inside the walls of a classroom and they don't have to learn on someone else's schedule. Instead, we learn by exploring things together, figuring things out as we go. It's messy, imperfect, but it's real, just like watercolor. When I started painting, one of the things that I wanted to do was to try and figure things out on my own. It's almost like learning to ride a bike. I wanted to know how exactly to use the materials, what exactly I needed, and I was searching for tutorials that would help me. And in doing so, in a way, I was almost creating this form of distance learning where I was learning from someone else across the screen. Now, while this provided a great foundation for me to put paint to paper, I also noticed that I had to unlearn a lot of things. Some of the things that I needed to unlearn was this need for an outcome. I started to feel really unsatisfied with my paintings, even though I enjoyed painting so much. You know, that meditative feeling that you get and that relaxation that comes with painting. However, I would end up getting really frustrated with my end product and I wasn't happy with where things were going because I was never able to paint just like that teacher on the computer online, that distance learning that I was talking about. It took me a while to realize that what was holding me back was my need for achievement and outcome and to be productive with the way I was spending my time with the painting. And then I noticed something happening too. This was exactly how school felt like, where we were often asked to do specific things that led to specific outcomes, and while these were all helpful, it also created blinders because I was no longer able to experiment, play, and explore, or even get to know a subject in greater detail because I was following someone else's schedule. If you're in the self-taught route and you've been teaching yourself watercolor for a while, being self-taught also means that we need to unlearn a lot of things that we used to define as success. Because art is messy, there aren't really straightforward answers. Progression in art isn't linear, and there are days where it feels good and then it doesn't. While having the right tools, materials, and also a roadmap or maybe a curriculum to help you to know what direction to take. I feel that our own ability to understand ourselves, what our strengths, our weaknesses are, is so much more important in this journey. We all need to acknowledge what are the things that we are good at when it comes to painting, because this is going to help us to leverage on what we already can do instead of constantly seeking our gaps. It is going to be an endless black hole trying to fill gaps in our learning. If you think about it, how much we know of the world, people around us, cultures, we don't know everything, and there is so much yet to be discovered. And school might have been a great starting point, but at the same time, beyond that, and what we continue to learn outside the classroom should also count. But let's face it, learning is not just about content and knowledge. It's about knowing what to do with the knowledge that you have been given. It's about understanding how it applies to you, your strengths, and whether or not you can use it to your advantage. When I was learning to paint through tutorials, it was almost like I was trying to test myself to get the same result that I was seeing on the screen. But I forget that creating art should be all about expression. There isn't really a real right or wrong way of doing things. In fact, I challenge you to think about how we impose ourselves on all of these shoulds and musts and how they tend to interfere with the way we are freely expressing. It's the same as well. I watch my child try and figure things out, and if I were to impose my own method or my way of doing things and not allow them to see how they have the flexibility of figuring things out, perhaps they might have been able to teach me a new way of doing things. And I feel like that should be the magic of learning, where we get to experiment, play, make mistakes in order to discover the possibilities so that we can feel empowered to make decisions. Learning doesn't come from getting everything right. It comes from the messes. Believe me, it took me a long while to realize this. Yes, when I was young, I was told that making mistakes is okay, that this is part of learning. But what I realized too was messes and mistakes were not always tolerated by everyone, whether it's your peers or your colleagues. All of these things and experiences made an impact on the way I saw messes. And then there's the next part. When we mess up, make a mistake, what do we do from there? Do we give up? Do we give in? Or do we push on? Now, these are questions that I don't have answers to because I believe that everyone feels differently about what to do when messes and mistakes happen. This has been something that I've been teaching the kids at home, and this is where I want to highlight that when things go a different way that isn't your way, it does not have to be called a mess. In fact, sometimes a different path or a different way is also a great way to just see things in a new perspective. Now, let me just bring you back again on what I typically do with my kids when we discover that things have gone wrong. There are a few things that I would often tell my kids, that things are always figure outable. This has been one of those words that I've been using around the house to help them to see that they have the flexibility of figuring things out or seeing other ways of reframing a situation. I think so many of us tend to condemn an idea or quit prematurely just because things did not seem to pan out. But what if we start to find new ways of doing things instead? Just like with watercolor. When I started painting with my kids around, instead of saying, I no longer have time for this, I started doing my paintings in pockets of 10 and 20 minutes. And this was also how I discovered layering. And if not for my kids and all of the things that I tell myself that I can't do because of them, I would not have pursued this immensely joyful hobby. I love having these chats with you. It always feels like an old friend who is sitting with me, watching my painting unfold as we journey together. Thank you so much for making time with me today, watching me paint. And I would love to hear your perspective of how being self taught has been and where you are with it right now. Whether it has been giving you joy or adding pressure, we all go through different stages, and I hope that you see that each phase has its place. And until then, I will see you again next week.